Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, what would you do if the person you trusted most, the one you built your life around, was hiding a secret that could change everything? This isn't just a story about love, it's about betrayal, second chances, and the moment when truth shatters the world you thought you knew. Sometimes, the people closest to us carry the deepest secrets, and when they come to light, nothing will ever be the same again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. What if the quiet, gentle woman who cooked your meals, folded your shirts, and stood beside you through every hardship, was secretly one of the wealthiest people alive? 7 years ago, Maeve walked away from a life of boardrooms, luxury estates, and private jets. She gave up the title of billionaire heiress to live in a small suburban home, believing she had found the kind of love that didn't need money to survive. She traded designer gowns for supermarket bargains, corporate negotiations for bake sales at the local school, and fine dining for cooking hearty meals in her modest kitchen, all for a man she thought would cherish her heart above all else. But that man saw her only as a stepping stone. When he threw her aside for someone he believed was better, he thought he was upgrading. In truth, he had just tossed away a flawless diamond for a cheap shard of glass. This is the story of how a hidden heiress betrayed, broken, and underestimated, brought back the part of herself the world had forgotten, and used it to set fire to the world of the man who wronged her. To everyone outside, Maeve Smith was painfully ordinary. She lived in a modest 2-story colonial home in Hampton, a quiet town better known for its charming old buildings than for any sign of extreme wealth. Her days moved at a slow, peaceful pace, mornings tending to her little garden, afternoons volunteering at the local library, evenings cooking elaborate dinners for her husband, Richard Smith. She drove a 5-year-old Ford. She clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. Her biggest luxury was a single latte from the local cafe each week. She was warm, polite, and endlessly devoted to the man she had married 7 years earlier. Richard was her whole world. Handsome, ambitious, and full of a smooth-talking charm that could win over even the coldest stranger. He seemed like a man destined for greatness. He worked as a mid-level financial analyst at a respectable but unimpressive firm in downtown London. To his colleagues, he was a sharp thinker with big dreams, but a humble background that kept him from climbing faster. Richard often complained about that background. Over cheap beers with friends, he'd sigh and say, "If only I had the capital, I could be running this city." What Richard didn't know, what no one knew, was that the woman he came home to every night was not really Maeve Smith, the orphan from nowhere, as she claimed. She was Maeve Vance, the sole heir to the Vance Corporation, a global empire worth over $200 billion, with business roots in technology, real estate, and energy. She had met Richard in her final year at the London School of Economics, studying art history under a false name. Maeve had wanted a taste of normal life after a childhood suffocated by bodyguards, private tutors, and the cold, watchful eyes of the elite. Her parents, Richard and Eleanor Vance, were brilliant business titans but emotionally distant. They had died in a private jet crash when she was just 18, leaving her in the care of her sharp, intimidating grandmother, Augusta Vance. Overnight, she became the sole heiress to an unimaginable fortune. The pressure was unbearable. She was trapped under a microscope, her every move tracked by the press and watched by opportunists who saw her as nothing more than a bank account. She needed an escape. That escape came in the form of Richard Smith, a scholarship student. From a working-class family, he was passionate, seemed genuine, and most importantly, appeared uninterested in money or status. When he suggested building a simple life together far away from her world of glittering lies, she believed him, with a mix of hope and naivety. Maeve did something no one in her position would have dared. She placed her entire fortune into a blind trust, accessible only through a web of legal protocols known by her and one trusted family lawyer, Javier Garcia. Then she told Richard a made-up story of growing up in a small orphanage, cut off from the world, and she embraced the life of a woman with nothing but her husband's love. For 7 years, she played her role perfectly. She found joy in small-town life and pride in supporting Richard's dreams. She believed they had something stronger than wealth, something unshakable. But over time, Richard's ambition turned bitter. The man who once claimed to value her heart began to resent that modest life. He made cutting remarks about her simple wardrobe, their budget, vacations, and her lack of connections. After fancy work events, he'd smirk and say things like, "Did you see the ring on David Walker's fiancée? 10 carats, at least." Her dad's a shipping magnate. His eyes would linger on Maeve's plain gold wedding band, his lip curling with dissatisfaction. He started working late, coming home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. Their once playful conversations became heavy silences, broken only by his deep sighs of discontent. When she tried to talk to him, he brushed her off. One evening, after she set the dining table for a quiet dinner together, he came home, dropped his briefcase, and snapped, "We're stagnant. Maeve going nowhere. I'm drowning, and you're just floating." Her voice trembled. "I thought this was what you wanted. I thought we were happy. I wanted a partner," he spat, "not a homemaker. I need someone with resources." That word resources hit her like a slap. It was the very thing she had spent her life running from. And now the man she gave everything for was throwing it in her face. For the first time in 7 years, she felt Maeve Vance stirring inside her, and she knew the quiet life was over. The war was about to begin. It was the emergency button, the break glass in case of catastrophe contingency. "Consider it done," Javier said, his voice instantly shifting from concerned guardian to ruthlessly efficient executive. "A car will be at your location in 1 hour. We have the Mandarin Oriental penthouse in London prepared for you. Your security team is mobilizing as we speak. What are your immediate instructions?" "The house," she said, looking at the small suburban box that had been her cage. "Sell it. Donate the contents to charity. I don't want to see a single thing from this life again." She paused, her gaze falling on the divorce papers still on the dining table. "And Javier, I need you to find out everything there is to know about a man named Charles Rothschild and his private equity ventures. I also want a full dossier on his daughter Victoria and my husband, Richard Smith. I have a preliminary file on the Rothschilds already," Javier said, his tone grim. "Charles has been trying to make inroads against Vance Corp, shipping logistics for years. This isn't a coincidence, Maeve. It appears your husband was traded like a valuable asset." The clinical business term was somehow more insulting than any emotional betrayal. "You weren't just left. You were strategically eliminated." "I understand," she said, her voice hardening. "One more thing, Javier. The divorce papers. Don't let Rich file them. You will be handling the proceedings." "My pleasure, Javier," a touch of steel in his voice. "We will file for adultery and fraud. His petition will be buried. He won't know what hit him." An hour later, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom, a car so out of place in Hampton, it might as well have been a spaceship, pulled up smoothly to her curb. A man in an impeccable suit, her new head of security, opened the door for her. As Maeve slid into the luxurious leather interior, she took one last look at the house, at the quiet street, at life that was now nothing more than a bad dream. She didn't look back as the car sped to the private airfield where a Vance Corp jet awaited. Maeve's phone, a new state-of-the-art satellite model provided by her security, buzzed. It was an encrypted message from Javier. Attached was a single document. "These are Maria Vance Corp, its holdings." Line after line, often incomparable numbers, company names, and market values that stretched into the billions. At the very end was the net worth of the inheritance she now fully controlled, $27.40 billion. She stared at the number, not with joy or triumph, but with a chilling sense of Richard had left her for a woman with resources. He had belittled her for having nothing. He had built his future on the foundation of her supposed poverty. He wanted to play in the big leagues. She was about to show him he wasn't even in the same sport. Thepanile's orphan was dead. Mae Vance, the billionaire industrial titan, had returned from the ashes and was coming to collect a debt of 7 years of pain and humiliation with interest. The series returns the transformation of Maeve Smith, the suburban wife, to Maeve Vance, the formidable CEO, was swift and absolute. It began the moment she stepped onto Theta Mark at Heathrow Airport and into the rarefied air of her old life. The Mandarin Oriental penthouse, with its sweeping views of the majesty of Hyde Park, was her chrysalis. It was a world of silent, efficient, staff floor-to-ceiling windows, and the ambient hum of immense power. Javier Garcia was waiting for her, standing by a grand mahogany table covered with files and electronic tablets. He looked older than she remembered, but his eyes held some sharp intelligence and unshakable loyalty. He did not hug her or offer platitudes. He simply gave her a small, respectful nod. "Welcome back, Miss Vance," he said. The title, so foreign, for so long, fit her like a custom-made suit. "It's good to be back, Javier." The first few days were a whirlwind of intense briefings. She was a quick study. Her mind, for so long occupied with domestic trivia, proved to be as sharp and analytical as her father's. She absorbed 7 years of market fluctuations, technological breakthroughs, and corporate strategy with a ferocious appetite. She wasn't just catching up, she was preparing for war. The physical transformation unfolded in parallel. The plain, unassuming woman from Hampton was systematically erased. A team of London's finest stylists, trainers, and nutritionists descended on the penthouse. Her long, unstyled hair washed into a sleek, sharp bob that framed her face and highlighted her cheekbones. Her wardrobe of faded jeans and cotton sweaters was replaced with a carefully curated collection of Tom Ford power suits, elegant Dior dresses, and dangerously high Christian Louis Vuitton stilettos. Her new uniform was armor. Every piece was chosen to project an aura of untouchable power and icy elegance. She learned to walk with a new posture, a straight-backed confidence that commanded attention. The soft, gentle cadence of her speech was polished into a precise, measured tone that balked an argument within a week. She was ready. Her reappearance was not going to be an quiet affair. It was going to be a statement. Javier had organized an emergency meeting of the Vance Corp board of directors, a collection of powerful, aging men who had grown comfortable in her absence, managing the empire under Javier's steady hand, but with no true Vance at the helm. She walked into the Vance Corp boardroom on the 80th floor of their London skyscraper. The click of her heels on the marble floor was the only sound in the cavernous room. Our conversation ceased. The 12 board members, titans of industry in their own right, stared at her as if they had seen a ghost. They remembered a quiet, grief-stricken teenager. They were not prepared for the woman standing before them now. "Good morning, gentlemen." Her voice was cold and steady as she took her seat at the head of the table, her father's seat. "I apologize for my long absence. I was occupied with other matters. Rest assured, my sabbatical is over." She didn't wait for their responses. She launched directly into a brilliant, ruthless analysis of the company's performance, pointing out missed opportunities, bloated divisions, and lack of aggressive innovation. She laid out a bold new vision for Vance Corp, one that involved a major push into sustainable energy and a strategic acquisition of a cutting-edge artificial intelligence firm. She had their complete undivided attention. The sleepy, complacent energy of Therum had been replaced by a palpable tension, a mixture of fear and reluctant admiration, but her grand strategy had a more personal, more direct target. "Finally," she said, her eyes sweeping the room, "I have reviewed the file on Rothschild Banking's recent ventures. Their attempts to undermine our shipping logistics are amateurish but persistent. It's time we send a message." She pulled up a new file on the larger screen at the front of the room. It was an innovative, mid-sized logistics company called Logi Next. Logi Next has developed a predictive shipping algorithm that could revolutionize the industry, she explained. Rothschild has been trying to acquire them for the last 6 months. Their offer is currently stalled at $900 million. She paused, letting the information sink in. "This morning," she continued, a shadow of a smile touching her lips, "Vance Corp submitted a competing bid for $1.5 billion all in cash. The deal will be closed by Friday." A murmur of astonished excitement rippled through the room. It was an aggressive, almost reckless move. It was a direct public slap at Charles Rothschild. Furthermore, Maeve said, her gaze turning to ice, he had taken a look at the Rothschilds' new private equity firm. It's a vanity project for his daughter and her new associate. She let the word hang in the air. They appear to be focusing their initial investments on the luxury hospitality sector. She clicked to another slide detailing a portfolio of boutique hotels. "We will begin a systematic acquisition of key properties in every market they target. We will outbid them, absorb their targets, and house their seed capital before they sign their first deal. I want their firm to be a complete and total failure. Is that understood?" The board members once said, skeptical, now looked at her with a new respect that bordered on fear. This was not Richard Vance's daughter. This was a predator. As the meeting adjourned, Javier stayed behind. "A bold re-entry, Maeve," he said, a glint of pride in his eyes. "Have you reminded them who's in charge?" "I wasn't talking to them, Javier," she said, looking out the window at the city below, a concrete jungle where only the strong survived. She was talking to him. She knew that the news of the Logi Next acquisition would hit the financial world like a Charles Rothschild would be furious, and Richard, so proud of his new position, his new life, would be right in the blast radius. He wanted to be in the big. She had just changed the rules of his game, and he didn't even know he was playing against her. Do you think Richard realized the magnitude of the mistake he had made? Share your predictions in the comments. The unmaking of a man. 2 months passed. Richard Smith was living the life he had always dreamed of. He and Victoria Rothschild were the city's new power couple. They had just moved into a sprawling penthouse on Serrano Street, a wedding gift from her father. Richard had a new title, Senior Vice President at Rothschild Private Equity, a corner office with a panoramic city view and a wardrobe of tailored suits. At last, in his own mind, he was a success. However, a shadow loomed over his new paradise. His first major venture, a fund to acquire luxury boutique hotels, had been a spectacular failure. Every target they identified, every deal they pursued, was inexplicably snatched at the last minute by an unseen, deep-pocketed competitor. Rumors on the London Stock Exchange whispered about a newly aggressive Vance Corp, but the moves were so precisely so targety that it felt personal. Charles Rothschild was losing capital and prestige, and the pressure trickled directly to Richard. "It's a ghost," Charles had snapped at him in a board meeting. "Someone is toying with us, and you with your fancy LSE degree don't seem to be able to figure out who." Tonight, however, was meant to be a reprieve, a celebration of their status. It was the annual Gala of Stars at the Prow Museum, the absolute pinnacle of London's social calendar. For Richard, this was his true arrival. He stood beside Victoria, her neck dripping in Rothschild diamonds, basking in the flash of cameras and the fawning greetings of the city's elite. He felt a surge of vindication. This was his place. For a fleeting moment, he thought of Maeve. He imagined her in her small house in Hampton, probably watching some cheap television show, completely oblivious to the glittering world he now inhabited. The thought filled him with a smug satisfaction. Had made the right choice. The grand doors to the Temple of Debod exhibition hall, where the main dinner was being held, opened. A hush fell over the crowd. A sudden collective holding of breath. The sea of famous faces parted as a new figure made her entrance. She wore a shimmering midnight blue silk gown that clung to her like a second skin, a single breathtaking diamond necklace. The legendary Vance star rested on her collarbone, catching the light and scattering it into 1,000 tinny rainbows. Her dark hair was styled into an immaculate sharp bob, and her eyes, cold and calculating, swept the room. Missing nothing. She was flanked by two men, the venerable Javier Garcia and Kaito Tanaka, the brilliant and reclusive CEO of a rival tech empire, a man who rarely made public appearances. Her presence radiated an almost gravitational pull of her and influence. Richard's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. His blood ran cold. The face was familiar, but the woman was an impossibility. It was Maeve, but it wasn't. It was as if his quiet, simple wife had been possessed by the spirit of a vengeful goddess. "Who is that?" Victoria hides beside him, her voice tight with jealousy and intrigue. "I've never seen her before." A pudgy red-faced banker, Ammon, who had been fawning over them moments before, laughed nervously. "You've been out of the country too long, Victoria. That's no one. That's May Vance." The name hit Richard like a physical blow. Vance Corp, the ghost in the machine that had been systematically dismantling his professional life. It couldn't be. It was a joke, a nightmare. "Vance," Victoria repeated, her perfectly plucked brows rising. "The Maeve Vance. I thought she was a recluse, a ghost." Well, the banker said, his eyes fixed on the approaching trio. "Theg host is back and she's apparently friends with Kaito Tanaka. Rumor is they're working on a merger. Can you imagine Vance Corp and Tanaka Industries? They could, by God." Richard felt the blood drain from his face. His carefully constructed world was tilting on its axis. All the pieces clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. The failed hotel deals, the Logi next acquisition, the inexplicable personal nature of the attacks on Rothschild. It had all been her. As if sensing his stare, Maeve's eyes met his across the crowded room. There was no flicker of recognition, no hint of their shared past. Her gaze was one of complete indifference, the kind of look one might give to a piece of furniture or a particularly uninteresting insect. That look was more devastating than any scream or accusation. It told him he was nothing to her. She, Kaio, and Javier moved through the room, a vortex of her. People Richard had been desperate to impress now fell all over them. Sylvesto, get a moment of her time. Charles Rothschild, Victoria's formidable foe, approached Maeve with a strained, obsequious smile. "Miss Vance," Charles said, his voice a summary of false cordiality. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm Charles Rothschild." May have extended a cold, gloved hand. "Mr. Rothschild, I've been following your recent market difficulties. Very unfortunate." Her voice was pure silk, but the words were pure venom. Charles' face tightened. "Indeed, it appears we have a rather aggressive new player to deal with." Aggression is simply another word for efficiency, Maeve replied softly before turning her full attention to Kao Tanaka, dismissing the Rothschild as if he were a junior associate. Victoria watched her face a mask of fury and humiliation. She turned to Richard, her voice a poisonous whisper. You know her, don't you? How do you know May Vance? Richard couldn't speak. His throat was dry. His mind was a chaotic symphony of denial and terror. Victoria's eyes narrowed, a shrewd, calculating light entering them. She looked at Richard's ashen face, then at the magnificent figure of Maeve Vance, and then back again. A slow, creeping horror spread across her features. Oh my God, she breathed, the realization hitting her. She's your ex-wife, the poor, pathetic orphan you told me about. That was her. Richard could only nod. A single jerky motion. The smug satisfaction he had felt minutes earlier had turned into abject terror. He hadn't just divorced a simple suburban woman. He had betrayed, humiliated, and discarded the single most powerful woman in the room. He had thought he was climbing a ladder. Instead, he had just stepped off a cliff, and he was only just beginning to realize how far he had to fall. Do you think Richard deserved what was happening to him, or did Maeve go too far? Leave your thoughts in Themet's A New Beginning. In the weeks following the gala, Richard's life unraveled with brutal speed. The Vance name was a death nail for his career at Rothschild. Charles, humiliated and furious, treated him with open contempt. Victoria, now seeing him not as a prize but as the biggest fool in the world, was cold and distant. Their relationship was Sato, a series of bitter, whispered arguments in their cavernous, silent penthouse. Social invitations dried up. Fawning colleagues now avoided his gaze. He was a pariah, a walking cautionary tale. Maeve, meanwhile, operated from a sphere so far above him he could only watch the fallout. She was a fixture in the financial news, a supernova of the industry. The merger of Vance Corp and Tanaka Industries was being hailed as the deal of the century, creating a global juggernaut that dwarfed all competitors. Every one of her moves was precise, strategic, and devastatingly effective. But in the midst of the corporate warfare and financial machinations, Maeve felt hollow. The revenge, while satisfying, was a hollow victory. She had dismantled Richard's world, but it hadn't filled the void in her own. Thiepenhaus felt less like a home and more like a gilded cage. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, seeking refuge from her own thoughts, he did something she hadn't done in years. She went incognito to a small, independent art gallery in the Shortstories neighborhood. Dressed in simple jeans, a cashmere sweater, and a low-brimmed baseball cap, she was a nobody. She was just a woman looking at art. The gallery was quiet. The air smelled of linseed oil and turpentine. The art was raw, powerful, and full of a desperate, beautiful energy. She was particularly drawn to a series of large, abstract canvases, chaotic swirls of black, white, and a defiant, electrifying blue. They spoke to Thastorm inside her own soul. There's something to them, isn't there? The voice, low and resonant, startled her. She turned to see a man standing busy. He was tall, with kind, intelligent eyes and hands stained with paint. He wore a paint-splattered t-shirt and worn jeans. He looked at the paintings, a look of deep understanding on his face. They're honest, Maeve replied, the word surprising her. That's him, the man said, gesturing to a figure in the corner. The artist who was talking animatedly with a potential buyer. Lucas Unel, he paints like he's trying to get out of a locked room, all passion and fury. The man finally turned his gaze to her, a warm, genuine smile crinkling the corners of his eyes on the owner. Daniel, caught off guard, she introduced herself simply as Maeve. For the next hour, Daniel guided her through the gallery, talking about the art, not with the pretentious jargon of the art world, but with a simple, heartfelt passion. He saw the story in every brushstroke, the emotion behind every color choice. He didn't ask her what she did, where she lived, or who she knew. He just talked to her about art. A part of herself she believed long dead began to stir. It was the art history student from LSE, the young woman who had been captivated by beauty and creation, not by balance sheets and market caps. She found herself returning to the gallery several times in the following weeks. She and Daniel developed an easy rapport. Their conversations moved from art to books, to music, and to the simple absurdities of life in London. With him, she wasn't a Vance, she was simply Maeve, a woman with a sharp eye and a quiet sadness hadn't prior to. He was a welcome anchor in the tendency of her new life to Versace. Meanwhile, a new and unexpected player entered the game. Kaido Tanaka, her new business partner, was not the cold reclusive Aeneas the media portrayed. In their private meetings, She discovered a man with a dry wit, a fierce intelligence, and an almost unnerving ability to see through her carefully constructed armor. During a late-night strategy session in Van's Corp boardroom, as they finalized the details of the merger, Har suddenly stopped, looking at her over the rim of his teacup. "You've enjoyed this, haven't you?" he asked, his dark eyes intense. "Dismantling Rothschild, humiliating your ex-husband." Maeve stiffened. "It was a necessary business strategy." Kaido allowed himself a small, knowing smile. "Of course. But revenge is a fire that consumes the one who wields it, Miss Vance. It will keep you warm for a while, but it will eventually leave you with only ashes." Has set down his cup. "Charles Rothschild is an old fool. Your husband is an insignificant parasite. They are not worthy of the energy you are spending on them. This API, a company that is worthy of your energy. The future we can build is worthy of it." His words hit a nerve deep inside her. He wasn't judging her, he was challenging her. He saw her net as a weapon of vengeance, but as a brilliant leader, and he was calling her to be better. He was the first person in her new life to speak of the future, not the past. "What do you propose?" she asked. "I propose," he said quietly, his eyes glowing with a new intensity. "That's what. Stop playing defense. Let's build something revolutionary. Let's pour our resources into the new sustainable energy division. Let's create something that changes the world, not just settle old scores. That is a victory worthy of a Vance and a Tanaka. It was a turning point." Kato's challenge, combined with the simple human connection she was finding with Daniel at the art gallery, began to shift her perspective. The rage that had driven her was beginning to cool, replaced by a new, more compelling ambition that she had proven she could destroy. Now she was beginning to wonder if she could build again. The war against Richard and the Rothschilds had been won, but the battle for her own soul, for the woman she wanted to become, was just beginning. And for the first time, she felt like she didn't have to fight it alone. She had found allies, not in bankers and lawyers, but in an artist's quiet gallery and across a boardroom table with a man who saw her future, not just her past. "Do you think Maeve should forgive Richard or move on with her life without looking back? We want to know your opinion." The final reckoning. Richard Smith's free fall was swift and brutal. Fired from Rothschild, he became toxic on the London Stock Exchange. His lavish lifestyle evaporated after a venomous annulment from Victoria, who even forced him to legally change his name to break ties with her family. Broken and stripped of his identity, he moved into a dreary apartment in the Camden Town neighborhood where his ambitions soured into a dangerous obsession. In his twisted logic, Mo owed him for waking her up, and he convinced himself he could still win her back. He began a campaign of pathetic harassment, dozens of pleading, then threatening emails and voicemails, all intercepted by Javier's team. When his messages went unanswered, his desperation led him to stalking. One night, he evaded security and confronted her in the private elevator lobby as she was leaving with Kao Tanaka. "Maeve," he shouted, his appearance disheveled, his eyes wild. She looked at the hollow shell of the man she had married, Richard. Her voice was devoid of emotion. "You need to stop this. Stop this." He laughed hysterically. "I'm just getting started. You think you can ruin me and walk away? I know the real you, the scared little woman who plays dress-up. This isn't you." Kaido took a slight step forward. "I think you should leave." Richard's gaze was filled with hatred. "And who are you, her new pet?" Maeve cut him off, her voice like ice. "He's my partner, Richard. Something you never were." She turned and walked away without a second glance. The public rejection pushed him over the edge. If he couldn't have her, he would destroy her. He sold a twisted, fabricated story to a notorious tabloid journalist, Marcus Ferris, painting himself as the victim of a manipulative, mentally unstable eyes. She hid billions to trap unwary husband. The headline screamed. The story was filled with distorted, intimate details designed to lend it credibility. Simultaneously, Charles Rothschild, seeking revenge, for damaging stories to the financial press, questioning Maeve's stability and fitness to run a global empire. The combined assault was a perfect storm. Vance Corp stock took a small hit, and whispers about Maeve's sanity began in the trading rooms. She was in a meeting with Javier and Kaido when the news broke. Javier was apoplectic, planning a multi-billion-pound lawsuit. Maeve, however, was unnervingly calm. Us read the article. Inside, the cold rage from the night Richard left. He had weaponized her intimacy, twisting the life she built out of love into something pathological. "Don't sue them, Javier," she said quietly. "Maeve, we must," he insisted. "We can't allow this." "No," she said, her eyes glinting with a new dangerous light. "A lawsuit is a battle. He has declared a war. And in a war, you don't file papers." You demand an unconditional surrender. She turned to Kaido, a killing smile on her face. He thinks he can control the narrative by exposing her past. He's forgotten one detail. I know all of his secrets, too, and unlike him, I have the proof. The time for reacting was over. Richard and Rothschild had pushed her too far, mistaking her restraint for weakness. Now she would show them what real power. She would end this not by winning, but by annihilating them completely. Maeve's counterattack was not a single explosive event, but a masterfully orchestral symphony of destruction. It began in silence. She unleashed the full terrifying power of Vance Corp's legal and intelligence divisions. The teams Javier Garcia had kept razor sharp. Her first target was Marcus Ferris and his tabloid. Within days, Vance Corp investigators had unearthed a career's worth of corruption. Javier didn't file a lawsuit. He personally delivered the entire incriminating file to the district attorney's office. Ferris was arrested, and the story he had written about Maeve was publicly discredited. Next, she turned her attention to Rothschild. While he had been busy planting stories about her instability, Maeve's team had been running a deep forensic audit on the entire Rothschild banking operation. They found a pattern of insider trading and fraud. The evidence was irrefutable. Javier Garcia arranged a private meeting with the Rothschild board, pointedly excluding Charles. He presented the evidence, explaining that Vance Corp now held a majority stake in Rothschild's debt. The message was clear. Either Charles Rothschild was removed or Vance Corp would release the evidence and call in their debt, an act that would vaporize the Rothschild legacy. Within 24 hours, the board announced that Charles was stepping down for health reasons. His attack on Maeve had cost him his empire. The final piece of her strategy was reserved for Richard. It was going to be the most public and devastating blow of all. She agreed to her first televised interview with Sarah Jenkins, a legendary journalist. Known for her tough questions, the interview was broadcast live in prime time. Maeve came on looking serene and powerful in a simple white dress. For the first half, she spoke eloquently about her vision for Vance Corp. Then Jenkins changed topics. Miss Vance, I have to ask about the recent very public attacks on you. Your ex-husband, Richard Smith, has made some very serious accusations. Maeve looked directly into the camera, her expression one of sad resolve. That's right, she said calmly. Richard and I were married for 7 years. At his request, I lived a life separate from my family's resources. I did this because I was in love. The story he told was a painful, twisted version of our life. But what he didn't mention was reason. Our marriage ended. From a folder, she produced a sworn affidavit detailing Richard's affair with Victoria Rothschild, which began over a year before their divorce. Then she pulled out emails between Richard and Charles Rothschild that outlined the plan to trade his Pennell's wife for a senior position at the firm. He didn't just leave me, Maeve stated. He sold me. The control room was in stunned silence, but she wasn't done. Mr. Smith has accused me of ruining him. The truth is, he was never the man he pretended to be. She slid his old credit card statements onto the table. These detailed £1,000 soft pounds spent on luxury items while he was telling me we couldn't afford to fix a leak in our roof. And this, she held up one last sheet, is his college application to LSE, where he lied about being an orphan long before he met me. Richard Smith's entire life has been a calculated fraud. She looked back at the camera, her eyes clear. I didn't destroy that man, I simply held up a mirror to him. My only fault was to love someone incapable of loving anyone but himself. I have paid the price for that mistake, and now so has he. She ended the interview by announcing the launch of the Vance Foundation, a $2 billion trust to support victims of emotional and financial abuse. In his Camden Town apartment, Richard watched the world collapse. She had exposed him completely. The reckoning was final. In the wake of it all, the world saw Maeve as a role model of strength. Vance Corp's stock soared. Richard, a socio-leaper, disappeared. He was rumored to be working a menial job somewhere in northern England, a ghost of his own ambitions. Finding a true home, Maeve's life for the first time was truly her own. The rage had subsided, leaving peace. The empire was no longer a burden, but a tool to innovate and build. Under her and Kaido Tanaka's leadership, the newly merged Vance Corp and Tanaka Industries Beckham, global leader in sustainable technology. Her work was her passion, a legacy that would dwarf the small dramas of her past. Her partnership with Kadoas, one of deep mutual respect and shared vision. But it was outside the bedroom that she found the quiet joy that had so long eluded her. She continued her visits to Daniel's art gallery in Shoreditch, always as Maeve. He remained a stabilizing force. drawn to her quiet intelligence and resilient spirit, knowing nothing of her immense power. One crisp autumn afternoon, a year after her return, they were walking through Hyde Park. "You seemed lighter," Daniel observed. Maeve smiled. "I feel lighter. There's something I need to tell you. My name isn't Maeve." She told him everything. The Vance name, the hidden life, the betrayal, the comeback. Daniel listened patiently. When she finished, a long silence stretched between them. So he finally said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "Does this mean I have to start calling you Miss Vance?" Maeve laughed, a sound off of relief. "I prefer Maeve." "Well, Maeve," he said, his eyes twinkling, "it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Now, are you going to finish that coffee, or are you going to use your billions to buy the whole cart?" In that moment, standing in the heart of the city she now dominated, Maeve felt a profound sense of completeness. She had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged not just victorious, but whole. She was surrounded by people who saw her for who she truly was. Cato, who respected her mind. Daniel, who treasured her spirit. She had lost a fantasy built on a lie, but she had gained something infinitely more valuable, a reality of her own making. The hidden Ares was gone forever, replaced by a woman who stood proudly in the light, the owner of her own vast, brilliant, and limitless horizon. He betrayed her, broke her, and left her with nothing, or so he thought. Maeve Vance's incredible journey from hidden wife to billionaire powerhouse is a testament to the unbreakable strength. A woman scorned, she didn't just get revenge, she rewrote the entire game. Her story proves that your past does not define you, and the deepest betrayals can forge the most powerful versions of ourselves. She took her pain and turned it into a global empire, and her heartbreak into a beacon of hope for others. If this story of resilience and ultimate triumph resonated with you,